Hello there, it's Obsidian Week. Let's take a crack at faceting an array of volcanic glass and see how they compare to each other and this pair of Apache tier obsidian squares I faceted a while back in the design Tic Tac by Jeff Graham. And after you watch this video, be sure to check out other Obsidian Week videos that will be linked in the description below. We're going to polish up 3 flavors of obsidian that are all from Kyle over at World of Rockhounds. This is Colombianite, sometimes marketed as a pseudo-tektite, but is really just a translucent obsidian like Apache tiers with a kind of mottled exterior. I've sliced up a chunk and we can see its clarity and how neat it looks just as is. I've also got this large slab of relatively translucent obsidian with a few opaque bands running through it. We'll just slice it up a bit and see what we can make. And lastly, there's fire obsidian, a rare, colorful form of obsidian where a thin layer of magnetite creates a play of color when the light hits it just right. I wanted to see whether faceting would help or hurt getting that color to pop. My 6-inch trim saw made quick work of these stones, and we're gonna cut out this because it's boring to watch. Oh look, it's not just a photo. I wore gloves because this is glass after all. Anyway, now we've got lots of little bits of obsidian to work with, and I'll let other Patrick say a few words.
And then this is our fire obsidian, the moving light. And you see there's 2 tiers of color. One is this one here, and then the other one is underneath it. And we can see that going sideways here, there's layers. And what I've done is traced the dark layer where light doesn't go through as best I could, and from the underside as well. That's also a light controlling layer. And on the bottom, this is the tentative plan of how to cut. This area here actually has a bit of light that passes through it. But what I'm going to try to do is facet a stone from this area here, which is about 7 millimeters maybe I can get a stone, and then cut it across here like this, and then I can cut that and cut a stone from there and cut a stone there. And this area also lets a little bit of light through it, but we're going to save that just in case. And then if these are both total failures, then Kyle will still have this piece to make something out of, and he'll have to grind away that anyway, so this would make a nice oval still, or a round of some kind. 2 layers here. There's actually a couple of possible layers underneath there where I think that thicker line above the dashed line is where the color is, and I see that happening because as we come this way and approach the edge, then that color matches up well with that line there where it meets the surface, because then underneath that there isn't really that layer of color. And then the color goes around, and you can see it's also there. And we don't see that line on this side, and that's because it's at the surface, because Kyle brought it to the surface. Until it ducks back down underneath on the other underside right there. And you can see that's underneath where this layer is.
Wow, isn't he just a firecracker of energy? Narrator Patrick back in the saddle here. Let's get to work on this Colombianite, and here's the pavilion roughed in on a 360 grit lap, with the girdle squared off as well. At 1200 it almost looks polished, but has a few scratches to get out, and I go straight from polish from 1200 to 50,000 diamond grit powder on tin. And the big facets are all done, and all that's left is to touch the stone down a few times to get those skinny facets all shiny. Then we transfer, and here I'm only using superglue to hold the stone on the dop while I cut the crown. This Colombian obsidian turned out nice, I think, despite the fracture in one corner, and yeah, it looks just like the Apache tiers. Moving on to the fire obsidian, see if you can figure out what's happening while I take a break, and then other Patrick will be back to explain it all.
So this is the table roughed in, and it's not perpendicular. I cut it at 8 degrees, and so in order to match the fire layer, I'm stopping a little shy of the edge there. There's still the original cab
corner on the top there that I'm leaving just because I don't want to lose the fire. And now we're going to transfer this, and I'm going to cut the bottom and then come back and cut the top so that I can change it so that this will be totally level as I cut it. And this is the fire obsidian re-dopped up. You can see it's very askew because I have it flat perpendicular to the table that I cut rather than perpendicular to the dop. You can see how askew that is as I rotate it. This is why you test cut a piece in a, maybe not as perfect a piece of a rough that you don't have experience in. I started cutting in the crown without having my girdle cut in properly, and so I was cutting in to meet along the girdle here, and that wasn't quite working out because the girdle facets that I had cut in weren't even all the way around, and so my crown facets aren't even all the way around, and that leaves my table a little bit offset, a little bit oval. You can see it kind of elongated up and down there, and it's just a little bit offset to the right of the stone right now. But I think this does show promise for having a cool effect with the rainbow obsidian. The only factor that I'm noticing that'll be an issue is in these stones, I don't have a lot of clear obsidian surface room above the fire layer. And so I don't have a lot of room to cut facets above it. And so this is why I have the table, and this is the flat side of this little tablet that I'm cutting from Tony Collins. And if I had more room, you could do like an apex rose cut kind of thing, and I think that would look really cool. But you can see the light really showing, the fire shows up well in the facets where it's over it. But you can see on the outside margin of the table there's no fire because I was cutting down through the fire layer. And in the original design, there's only this single row of facets along the girdle here, and I added in the second row of facets because I had a little low spot that I had to cut away, and I didn't have enough room to cut down the table too much further, so I added in a second row of facets where the original tier around the outside was 40 degrees. I added in a tier of 11 degrees, and I think that adds an interesting effect as well, so I'm glad that I did that. But I'll zoom in actually, I should have done that earlier. It's a good first test, and I'll transfer this, and this is actually the pavilion, I cut the table first, or the crown, where normally I cut the pavilion first, but since I cut the table and the crown, I can, transfer it and cut the pavilion now. Well, I think that turned out interesting. We've got rainbow kind of playing around the corner facets there. And I think maybe making it so there's no table on the next stone will make it so you can view the rainbow. It gets lost sometimes in the reflection of the table, since that's kind of the peak area of where the rainbow is. If I make it so it's just an apex table, then maybe that would make it so you can see the rainbow from any direction without having to fight the light quite as much. Here is attempt 2, all dopped up and ready to start cutting. You can see our fire somewhere in there. Let's see. Hard to get the right flash with the... Oh, there we go. So as you can see, I need the light angled in just a specific way to get the rainbow effect in there. And there's 2 layers of fire in this stone. You can see them kind of... The top one is that round one that again is just at the very surface there, that very uppermost, and then I've written in Sharpie where I think the second fire layer is, to the best of my tracing ability. And I've tried to grind on the bottom of this stone. I've tried to grind it so it's perpendicular to the flat side of the dot here, so that I can just cut the table and go from there. But because last time I had to cut in the table a little bit and then transfer after I found the flat surface of the fire, and then cut in the pavilion a little bit and then transfer back to the table to cut in the table, and then transfer back to the pavilion to finish the pavilion. So I tried to sidestep one of those steps by getting the, starting out perpendicular to the fire layer. I don't know that I did a great job at that, but we'll see how close I am to level or parallel to the zero surface of this one. And it may not matter quite as much, because with this next design that I'm doing, it's not a flat table that goes across the surface. It's just a simple 4-square apex design by Area Akvan. And yeah, I'll start cutting in. I'll do a quick test cutting it down a little bit, probably to about there, to get the table approximated, because essentially my low spot is over here, which means I have to cut down on this side down to there at least. But fortunately there's more room to work with on above the fire layer this time. So I guess let's get started. Cutting in at 600, trying to show a little bit of the color. There's a little bit in the corner there. You can see a square kind of appear if I get it wet. That's after a 1200 grit kind of polish, trying to get light. Well, I think it's almost time to wrap up this Obsidian Week video. I hope you got some insight into how to facet this stuff and my approach to cutting a stone. I don't really have any trouble polishing obsidian. Maybe a few stray scratches appeared from time to time, but those were quickly worked out. And the best thing I've found when polishing obsidian is to just mix up the approach if something isn't working. I usually polish slow like this, but if I keep getting scratches, then I might kick up the speed and power through it, or adjust the water or hand pressure. Despite the precision required in faceting, there's really a lot of feel required as well. Oh, and the square fire obsidian turned out okay, but I actually really like the way it looks on the crown side, where the light shines through the fire layer and throws color on the facets. I might try to do something with that in the future, but that'll do it for Obsidian Week. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out the other Obsidian video goodness in the description. Let's all just agree to ignore that I brought this stone up at all.